Look, y'all, I ain't trying to worry you or nothing, but you need to know that there are going to be spoilers here for Chainsaw Man Volume 5. I ain't holding back too much, y'all, so if you ain't read it yet or you don't want to be spoiled, back off now. Hi guys, Okamo Otaku here. Thanks for joining me and welcome back. We're here to talk about Chainsaw Man Volume 5, and the title is Minor. Now, Volume 5 covers chapters 36 through 43, and it's going to take us through the end of the Katana Man arc that we started last volume and take us right into my personal favorite arc, which is the Bomb Girl arc. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now, as far as the things that Volume 5 has to offer us, we're going to see the conclusion to the completely epic Katana Man arc, and then we're going to move right into the Bomb Girl arc, where Denji's going to discover a new romantic interest who seems to be a little bit more explosive than one would first assume upon looking at her. It's a lot of fun, and it's my personal favorite arc in the entire series. Yeah, no, that's not an understatement. The Bomb Girl arc is for sure my favorite. I can't wait to talk with you guys about it. So let's get into it. Of course, as usual, I'd like to take a moment here to stop and appreciate this wonderful cover art from Fujimoto. It's beautiful. It features Denji transformed into his full chainsaw mode in a clash against the Katana Man, who's also in his form. And they appear to be trading blows and locking blades as they kind of fall through the sky. And they're surrounded by just streams of blood, just kind of like going everywhere around them, which is appropriate because they're both blade users in one form or another, and so the fights they get into tend to be reasonably bloody. The background is actually colored in like this pretty light yellow, kind of pastel colored, and the title is actually, well, the Japanese title is actually in full rainbow colors, which is, you know, beautiful, honey. We're otakus over here. And the author's name is just in plain black, and the English translated for the English translation of the title and the author's name are in white and purple respectively. It's a gorgeous cover as usual. Fujimoto doesn't miss. His volume cover arts are just peak, you know. The series art in general is always really great, but I'm always super impressed by the work and detail that he puts into his cover arts, even when they're the simpler ones, as in the volume 4 cover art, which was just Aki in front of a Target sign. So big fan, 10 out of 10 as always. And so at the end of Volume 4, at the end of Chapter 34, we see Aki encounter Sawatari, who then summons her Ghost Devil and has it regurgitate Himeno's Ghost Devil, because she's been holding on to it ever since she killed Himeno back at the restaurant. And so moving to Chapter 35, Minor. Aki was obviously reasonably shocked to encounter the Ghost Devil, especially in this context, but using his future sight, he manages to deflect and evade as many of the Ghost Devil's attacks as he can while trying to move forward towards Sawatari. But as we've seen before, the Ghost Devil is literally just a mass of arms with a head, and so there's just too many to dodge and too many to deflect, and he ends up being choked out by the Ghost Devil. And so while he's in the middle of losing consciousness, he has a flashback to Himeno, who in the flashback she offers him a cigarette, and then she takes it back once she realizes that he's too young for it, but she promises that she'll give it back to him one day in the future when he needs something to rely on. And so we cut back to the present, and the Ghost Devil releases Aki from its chokehold. And from the massive arms that make up its body, a single arm, Himeno's arm, comes out and hands Aki a cigarette with the words "Easy Revenge" written on it. And this seems to help Aki center. He calms down, and he remembers that the Ghost Devil can't actually see. It can only sense its targets by fear. And so he calms down, and he manages to maneuver around and get onto the Ghost Devil's back. And while he's there, he draws his sword, and he makes a promise to Himeno that he'll die soon and he'll see her. And then he goes to cut off the devil's head. Sawatari goes to summon her Snake Devil again, but Kobeni, who I have seriously, this Katana Man arc has turned me all the way around on Kobeni. I swear I love her now. But she shows up and has a knife to the girl's throat. And Aki's like, "Yeah, girl, don't kill her. I've got some questions for her." And then he asks Kobeni why she didn't quit. And Kobeni just says it's because she's close to getting a bonus. Which, you know, relatable content, honey. So we move into Chapter 36, titled Katana versus Chainsaw. And as we know, whenever we get the versus Chainsaw chapters, that means shit's about to get lit. So we see Denji and Power. They arrive at HQ. And Denji suggests that they try and be stealthy. But Power, being power, goes in, guns blazing, thinking that she'll get to impress Denji with her new training, calling herself the strongest there is. And so Denji kind of lets her go off and do her thing. He stays in the elevator and goes up to another floor, and he's getting ready to pull his cord as he steps off the elevator, but he runs into Katana Man and a few of the gun agents. And so Katana Man calls for a quick timeout and says he just has a few questions that he wants to ask, and then he requests compensation for the old man's death, the Yakuza man who was pressing Denji for death in Chapter 1 and tried to sacrifice Denji to the zombie devil after sacrificing himself and all of his henchmen to the zombie devil. Intentionally, he sacrificed himself to the zombie devil. And so Denji is fucking annoyed by this, obviously, and he tells them that they were already zombies when he killed them. But Katana Man, they're getting into a bit of a philosophical exchange here. He says that he asks him if he really felt nothing about killing, zombies who were formerly humans. And Denji confirms that no, he felt nothing. Which I completely get, because it wasn't like these were his family members that were turning into devils. These are people who were fully intending to harm him, and who effectively did by serving him up on a platter to the zombie devil. Katana Man says that despite giving his heart to a devil, that he still felt guilt for killing zombies, and he says that Denji is the only devil hybrid that he's met without a conscience. But we know that that's not entirely true, because we got the scene where Denji watched Aki through the window as he cried over Himeno's death, and even though it didn't make him cry, and he considered that the people that he's currently spending his time around, if any of them died, it wouldn't overtly affect him. Even if he was sad, he would recover from it pretty quickly. I maintain that the fact that he is even able to consider what the ramifications of that means means that he has not lost his humanity. He has not lost his heart. But Katana Man accepts his impending murder as a mercy killing, but Denji refuses, and they both transform and clash. Because Katana Man fully thinks that killing Denji is going to be like a favor to Denji, as if oh well, you don't have your human heart anymore, so let me just end your life, which is really fully hypocritical, because here you are working with zombies, and you're also a hybrid devil. But let's not get into that right now. We'll save that for our character analysis video that we're going to do on Katana Man in the future. And they clash. They end up clashing together, and they crash through a wall. And as they're battling, they fall down to the streets, and that ends the chapter 36. So moving to chapter 37, which is titled "Train Head Chainsaw." Denji falls into a moving train, and when he lands, he blocks an overhead strike from the Katana Man, and that sends them both flying through the roof of the train, where they land into the carriage. And there are regular humans inside the carriage, so they're all kind of like running around trying to get the fuck away from what just happened. And Denji goes to protect a woman who got injured in the crash, but he loses his arm when Katana Man uses that real Naruto big slash that he does, where he kind of like ducks down. He's got like one blade here, and he has a head blade like this, and he pulls a total Zoro from One Piece, where he just kind of like rushes forward at the opponent so quickly that they can't do anything about it. We've seen him use that to cut Denji and a hostage in half. We've seen him use that to cut Aki's chest open. So we know this is a relatively deadly attack. And so he uses that attack, and he cuts off Denji's arm as he's trying to protect this woman. And then he goes to cut off Denji's other arm, but Denji, ever the shit talker, says that he can still fight with the chainsaw blade on his head. And they have another clash, and the chainsaw on Denji's head ends up shattering, actually. And so they're standing there, and the Katana Man demands an apology, and he promises to kill Denji quickly. But Denji kind of just looks at him, and it's revealed that Denji managed to cut the Katana Man in half using a chainsaw kick. So for the first time, we've seen him manifest a chainsaw from somewhere other than his arms or his head. He now has a chainsaw running the length of his leg, and he used that during his clash where the Katana Man was so focused on the head chainsaw to cut him clean in half. It was great. And so to end the chapter, he just looks at him and he mocks him by quoting Kishibe, who said to him, "Prey should never trust a hunter's word." And we end the chapter. Beautiful. Now we move into chapter 38, titled Easy Revenge, like the cigarette that Himeno's disembodied arm gave to Aki a couple of chapters ago. And we see the Katana Man, he's restrained and in his human form again, and he's just kind of yelling and like bitching at Denji because he lost, and Denji just calls him a loser, says that losers are always loud, and it's true, losers do be loud as ones, like, girl. And Denji says that, but Denji says this isn't enough punishment for him, and he suggests a tournament as Aki arrives. And Aki's like, girl, what? And he's like, the tournament will be to kick the Katana Man in the balls repeatedly until the cops arrive. And that the winner will be the person who gets the loudest scream out of him. And initially, Aki's like, girl, our job is to capture them or kill them, not to torment them. We can't do that. Himeno would not want us to do that. But then he's like, you know what? Let's do it. And they decide that the prize is going to be whatever remains of the Katana Man's testicles, which for me was just great. He deserves it. He was a dickhead the entire time. Like the villains in the series, they tend to be assholes. You know what I'm saying? And so they're attacking him, and Aki, feeling fully full of revenge, and that easy revenge, and fully because this is Aki's proper revenge, I suppose. Katana Man is the one who killed him, and no, he shot her and killed her. Sabatari dealt the final blow by having by eating her ghost devil, but I don't know. As I said, it really kind of depends on how you feel about it. What really led to her dying was her being shot by Katana Man, and the next thing that she did was to offer all of herself to her ghost devil, which we saw was disintegrating her body as it attacked. But then she was immediately wiped out completely when Sawatari had her snake devil eat the ghost devil. And so I suppose the question of how she died is kind of up in the air, since the Katana Man didn't actually kill her. She survived his attack. But either way, Aki's taking this opportunity to get his easy revenge. Sawatari ain't here, Himeno ain't here, Katana Man's who's here, so we're gonna get this revenge. After attacking him, Aki calls his screams a requiem for Himeno, which I thought was just beautiful. You know, if you know what a requiem is, I want to say it's a funeral song. It's a song that's meant to be sad and meant to mourn someone. And he says that this man screaming as they kick him repeatedly, full power in the balls, are a requiem for Himeno. And I agree, it seems beautiful. And so we cut to Makima, and she is currently giving a report to the Bureau. And they ask her why Denji was the target, but she says that Sawatari was killed by the Snake Devil before she could be questioned, and that was likely a part of the contract that she signed. And she also reveals that they have collected enough Gun Devil fragments that they have enough for the chunk to actually start tracking down the Gun Devil itself. And so later, we cut to Denji, who's having a recurring nightmare of a door. There's an eye looking through the door at him, and Pochita's voice is calling his name, and Denji invites Pochita in, but instead Pochita tells him to never open this door. And then Denji wakes up in a cold sweat from the nightmare. And I think when he wakes up, he sees Power to his left and Aki to his right. And they're kind of sleeping and and he bickers a little bit with Power, who wakes up, and she's got brand new horns. So she got the two she originally had, but she also has like two sticking out the side of her head now. And they have a little exchange, and then she suddenly displays the ability to kind of punch him casually across the room. And they both express shock at the amount of power she has now, which we're going to get into an explanation about that later on. But for now, that's going to end our chapter. And so now we move into chapter 39, which is titled Tearjerker, and it's also the canonical official end of the Katana Man arc. This will be the last chapter for the Katana Man arc in totality. And we cut to Makima, who's observing Power and her changes, the horns and the strength, and she determines that Power took in too much blood during the zombie fight, because, as it's been established now, Denji, Power, and likely other devils and fiends, while they fight, they absorb blood from their opponents to keep themselves powered up and healed. But even more than that, Power is a blood fiend. She was a fiend that was created by the blood devil, so blood is already her power anyway. And so drinking in, it just makes sense to me that taking in an over amount of blood would give her a power boost that, somebody who wants to keep her in control probably wouldn't care for. And so Makima says that she's going to have some drained in order to weaken her and make her a little bit more controllable, which we see in the panel makes Power visibly nervous. They don't really elaborate as to what that means, but it does. And then Makima says that in the meantime, she's going to pair Denji with a fiend named Beam, who is the shark fiend. And that's just going to persist while Power is busy getting her blood drained. And then Beam appears out of the floor because he's got the ability to swim through any surface. It's really cool. It reminds me of Senior Pink from One Piece. He was from the Dressrosa arc. He was one of Doflamingo's guys, and he had the swim fruit that allowed him to just swim through any surface. It's actually really cool. One of my favorite Dofruit's abilities in the entire series. I'm being sidetracked right now, but it was super cool because the whole thing in that series is that if you eat a devil fruit, you lose the ability to swim. But if you eat the swim fruit, that doesn't really matter anymore because now you can swim through solid objects. Yeah, you can't go into the water anymore, but who needs water when you can swim through concrete, And so, Beam shows up and he tries to hug Denji, who immediately punches him, and because he's not having none of that shit. And then Makima notes that Beam is a huge fan of Denji and has already has already promised to follow Denji's every command. And she sees that he's annoyed. Makima can tell that Denji is annoyed by this whole turn of events, having to lose power and having to be paired up with some new fiend. And so she decides that she's going to offer him out on a date. Of course, he accepts. And so we cut to Denji arriving several hours early to their date night, and Makima arrives to reveal that they're going to be going on an all-day movie marathon until midnight. And so they go to several movies with Denji just kind of getting bored through each scene, as neither of them are expressing much reaction to the various movies that they're going to. They cut to them going to at least two or three different movie scenes, and each one Denji's just like getting more and more bored. They're not talking; it's all visual, but he's just kind of he's not feeling this shit. And so before they go to the last movie, they have a talk about the fact that neither one of them seem to really be enjoying the movies that they're watching, because neither one of them is having much of a reaction. And Denji says that he doesn't really think that he gets film, and Makima says that she agrees, but says that the ones that she does tend to watch and feel something from tend to be life-changing for her. And so they go into the final movie, where they show that the movie actually managed to make both of them cry. They're both sitting in the theater and they're just kind of crying silently. And as they leave, they discuss the film, and Denji turns to Makima and he asks her if she believes that he still has a heart, because that's been an ongoing struggle for Denji, determining whether or not he thinks he still has a heart or still has any of his humanity left. And so Makima just leans on his chest and listens to his heart, and she confirms that he does have a heart still. And that leaves Denji just kind of blushing in the street, and he loved that. Makima is his girl, so not only was she all up on his chest and whatnot and listening to his heart making him feel good, but she confirmed that he does indeed still have a heart, which we already knew, because again, I feel like if he did not have at least some sliver of his humanity left, these things wouldn't occur to him to question, and they wouldn't matter to him very much. So with that, we end the chapter and we put a close on the Katana Man arc. In the next chapter, chapter 40, we're going to move into my favorite arc of the entire series. Stay tuned. Alright, and so now we move into chapter 40, which is titled Love Flower Chainsaw. And this is the beginning of the Bomb Girl arc, which again, I can't say it enough, is my favorite arc of the series. In fact, it is the reason I'm sitting here before you today, because I made it about halfway through this arc, and that was the point at which I decided to make my first video, which was Chainsaw Man, Expectation versus Reality. It took me 40 chapters in to make a proper first video. It takes a while to be sure that you're in for some shit for a while, but once I made it into the Bomb Girl arc, I knew I was here to stay. There wasn't any going anywhere. So chapter 40 opens up with we see Beam, and he's just kind of in the ground, just kind of quietly trailing behind Denji as he walks home. And he's thinking of his date, and how he had it confirmed he still has a heart. And he's all super excited about that, and all in love with Makima and shit. And he thinks of Makima and how she was able to calm his recent concerns about his humanity. So he decides that he's going to use the wish that she promised him if he manages to kill the Gun Devil, to ask her out on a proper date. Because she's the only woman that he thinks that he'll ever want. I shouldn't say that he thinks he ever want. She's the only woman that he will ever truly want. And then it starts to rain, so he runs for cover into a phone booth from the rain. And so as he's hiding in the phone booth, a young woman comes through the door and shocks him a little bit. And she apologizes and then starts to laugh. And then she starts to cry in the middle of her laughter, saying that Denji's face reminds her of her dead dog. Which, girl, what? And he gives her a flower because he had recently eaten a bouquet of flowers. I skipped over that detail in the last chapter, but he ate a bouquet of flowers, so he coughs the flower up and gives her one. And she thanks him and smiles, which kind of stuns him. Again, you have to remember that Denji, he grew up really poor, pretty much alone, and he's only 16 years old, so his hormones are kind of rushing everywhere. Every woman he meets, he kind of falls in love with it immediately, almost. Basically, if they give him any kind of positive attention, he kind of falls head over heels. And so the rain ends, and she invites him to go to her job, which is a cafe called Futamichi. And so they walk there, and when they arrive, Denji grabs a table while she goes and gets ready. And she orders them 2 coffees. They sit down and try and drink it. Denji realizes that he hates coffee, but he's reading her body language, and he thinks that maybe she likes him. And so the Bomb Girl goes to introduce herself as Reze, and Denji follows suit, introducing himself. But then he starts to think of Makima and is concerned that maybe he likes this new woman that he just met. And so that is the end of chapter 40. But I'm going to take a second here and tell you that I don't know if any of you have ever consumed the series Tokyo Ghoul, but don't have coffee in coffee shops with bitches named Reze. it never ends well for you. That might not mean anything to some of you. Hopefully it does, because it means a lot to me. But yeah, don't have coffee with bitches named Reze, because it's not going to go well for you. And so now we open up on chapter 41, which is titled Before the Storm. And we see Aki, who is currently on patrol with the Angel Devil and hoping to earn his way onto the Gun Devil Task Force, because again, his ultimate goal is to take out the Gun Devil for killing his family. He's already gotten his revenge for Himeno, so now he just is still back to focus to his original target, which Himeno was always against him having as a target, but that's beside the point. And so the Angel Devil is kind of lazy, and he just kind of wants to sit and eat treats. But Aki warns him that non-compliance will mean dying. You know, he's a devil, and that's basically the rule for all of the devils who work with the Bureau. Either you follow the order of your handler or whoever else is your superior, or you die. Simple as that. They threaten Denji and Power with that all the time. This is Angel Devil being threatened with it. I'm sure that the Shark Fiend, the Violence Fiend, and the Puppet Fiend or Spider Fiend. She's a Spider Fiend. I'm sure they all have received those same threats, you know, multiple times before. And so, in a flashback, Makima introduces the two, and she explains that the Angel Devil drains life force from other people, from living beings, with just a mere touch, any physical touch against them. It even works if he touches them through their clothing. And he can turn that life force into powerful magic weapons. And they first found him after he killed an entire village full of people. He drained their entire life force. And she says that aside from Kishibe, he's the most powerful person that they have working in the organization. Later, Aki and the Angel Devil, they find a dying freelance devil hunter, and Aki orders the Angel Devil to end his suffering by draining the remaining life force that he has. But the Angel Devil refuses that order because he says that he is still a devil despite being an Angel Devil, and that he believes that all humans need to die the most excruciating deaths as possible. So performing a mercy killing on one is against his code as a devil. And so Aki does the deed, and then the two of them agree that they can never get along on like a personal level. And so we cut to Denji, who is currently in the midst of trying to decide whether he loves Makima more or Reze more. And you know, it's a mad internal struggle for our boy. But Reze comments that he has been to her restaurant every day this week so far, and he mentions that he can't read and can only write the kanji for balls, which makes her laugh. And he says he wants to learn how to read, and he accepts her invite to go to night school. So after that, we cut to a man who is really badly scarred and kind of half-dressed, and he's talking to the Typhoon Devil and asking why that devil wants Denji's heart. The Typhoon Devil tells him to mind his fucking business, bitch, and remember his contract. You get eternal use of the Typhoon Devil's powers, as long as you bring me Denji's heart. And so the man then says, he talks about how he once killed a skilled hunter by targeting and torturing his entire family. And with that, we end the chapter. And so now we open chapter 42, which is titled, Teach Me How to Swim. And, swim they do. So Denji is currently in his head apologizing to Makima because right now he's in the middle of walking through an abandoned school and holding hands with Reze, which, you know, gives him all sorts of internal turmoil. And they find an empty classroom and they're kind of playing teacher and student when Reze asks Denji if devil hunting is good for someone who has such a low level of education. And Denji says that that's fine because he's really just happy for his 3 meals and a cot, which Reze says is really the bare minimum living standard that anyone should expect for anything. And Denji says he's happy with it. But then she suggests they go swimming after that because she notices that Denji is becoming uncomfortable with the subject. And so we cut to her stripping next to the pool, and Denji's doing the same while admitting that he can't swim, while also thinking of Makima. And so he nervously jumps in, and Reze starts teaching him how to swim before they both leave the pool and go inside after it starts to rain. And then Reze just randomly asks Denji if he would prefer to be the city mouse or the country mouse, which is I want to say it's an old Aesop fable or something like that. But then we cut to Aki and the Angel Devil, and they're having the exact same conversation about the country mouse and the city mouse. And the Angel explains that the country mouse has a safe and boring life, you know, compared to the city mouse's comparatively much more dangerous but also much more fun life. And Angel says that he would much rather be a country mouse, but that Makima has forced him to be a city mouse at this point. So we cut to Denji, who says he prefers the fun and the food of the city mouse, regardless of how dangerous it is. Because if you think about it, he kind of began his life as a country mouse, just kind of out literally in the country, just scraping by with a boring, relatively safe life, and just kind of not working out. He's been loving the change ever since, so it makes sense that he would choose the city mouse over the country mouse. And so, afterwards, Reze invites Denji to a food festival, and then she gets up and leaves to go to the bathroom. And when she gets there, she encounters the scarred man who's from last chapter, who's wielding a knife. And we cut the chapter there after we cut back to Denji, who is currently kind of freaking out because when he closes his eyes, now instead of just seeing Makima in his mind's eye, he can see Reze standing next to her as well. Which is meant to symbolize the fact that he's really having a hard time right now deciding who he wants to put his focus and energy into, Reze or Makima. And just for the record, this is my favorite arc. So I love Reze, but I think I'm still a Makima supremacist. I don't know how I feel about her yet, but I love her. Which I think is kind of what Denji's going through. And so with that, we end the chapter into chapter 43, which is titled Jane Fell Asleep in the Church. And we cut to Reze, who is currently being chased to the rooftop by the scarred, knife-wielding man. And she asks who he is, but he didn't answer that. Instead, he just tells her that she will be the cheese in his trap for Denji. And he explains that he intends to just peel her face and to gouge out her eyes and to use her to torture and control Denji. And then he moves to attack her, but she displays badassery that we couldn't have known she had by dodging his attacks and then swinging around and jumping onto his back, where she proceeds to choke the ever-loving shit out of him while singing a Russian lullaby. And she continues to, the following panels just shows her continuing to sing as she continues to choke him as his body slumps to the ground. And she continues doing this. And then she stands up and she looks over at the Typhoon Devil, who was watching in a nearby drain. And then the Typhoon Devil immediately apologizes to her, and it calls her Lady Reze. And she says that she is willing to forgive this transgression as long as he disposes of the body of this man. And then afterwards, she goes back to Denji, just kind of hopping along with a smile on her face after just having murdered a man in cold blood and revealing herself to have some connection to devils, or at least the Typhoon Devil. And so the next day, the two attend the food festival that she invited Denji to, and they're watching fireworks, kind of being all romantic and lovey-dovey. And then she asks Denji if he would quit devil hunting and go on the run with her, where she can protect him and make him happy. And we end the volume there. We end the chapter there. And boy, we came away with a lot more questions than we had going into it. Personally, this is one of my favorite volumes. My personal full favorite volume is definitely volume 6, but we'll get into that later on. Get into the comment section. Tell me what you thought of volume 5. And in the meantime, please like, share, and subscribe. And please stay tuned until I come back to you again with my volume 6 review.